Okay, hello, dear colleagues who are joining right now 1 minute before the start. Please find the chat box and put some pluses or yes or hello where you are joining from to our webinar. So make sure that you have good sound and you see us and you see the screen, and in a minute we will start. Okay, hello, everyone. If you feel comfortable, please type in the chat box where are you now. I mean, the city or the region is Zaporizhia, it's Uman, it's Ternopil, it's Novakakhovka, I suppose. Yeah, Novakakhovka. It's Vishneva, Kiev, Germany, Argentina, Buenos Aires. Житомир, Дніпро, Борислав, Тернопіль, again, Київ, Дніпро, Харків, Київ, Львів, Chornomorsk, it's Odessa region, city which suffers a lot lately. Mykolaiv, another city which suffers a lot. I think that there is not a single place in our country which is not suffering from what is happening in our country. So it is 4 p.m. Kiev time, and I'm very glad to see you here. I think that if you joined, you are interested in both the topic and the speaker. Very few words before we actually start. First of all, please make sure that you are in the safe place, or the safe place is very close to the place where you are now. And don't worry if there is an air raid signal. This webinar is being recorded, so everyone, those who joined, those who registered, you will receive the video recording of this event, but your safety is first and foremost. And of course, in 3 days' time, every participant who is now live with us will receive the certificate of the participant. And I'm happy to introduce and give the floor to our speaker, guest, and a big friend of our country and Ukrainian teachers. It's David Spencer, who is Macmillan author, but also he is a teacher. He's our colleague, and he's an incredibly creative person. David, all the audience is yours. I'm happy to have you today with Ukrainian teachers.
Thank you so much, Ina. You can all hear me, right? I can imagine you can hear me. Tell me if not, but it's just, I'm feeling, actually, I've got goosebumps at the moment because it's just such an amazing experience to be with all of you here. I know that this is a difficult time. Obviously, I know this is a really bad time for you. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. I do feel very emotional, to be honest. I'm going to start actually making me more emotional with some of my trips to Ukraine in the past. It feels like a lifetime ago, but I'm just so happy and lucky that I was able to visit your country. And you can see from the pictures that I've obviously been to lots of places in Ukraine. Can I tell you that you know, this beautiful edition of Gateway is one of the most special books to me in my career. I'm sure you know about this book, but it's not just a book. You know, the fact that it has this beautiful, you can see it here, Gateway to Ukraine. These books are very special to me. And I was thinking just before, the next time that I am in Ukraine, I'm going to bring these books with me, and I'm going to ask every teacher from Ukraine that I meet to sign my book. And this is going to be the most special book in the whole of my career. It's very special to me. I can also tell you that at the moment, before I begin my talk, okay, I'm going to begin my talk in a minute, but I think this is important for me to tell you. At the moment, I'm giving talks around the world where I'm talking about the superpowers of English teachers. And I think some of you will know that this talk was actually inspired by you teachers in Ukraine. I gave a webinar for Ukraine, the first webinars I think that were given for teachers in Ukraine. And it was like, it made such an impact on me that this talk now has become like the talk that I'm giving around the world about the superpowers of English teachers. And it actually begins with a slide which is showing the work that you guys are still doing every day in Ukraine, which I think is just like the most amazing things. So this webinar is just another way of trying to thank you people for doing such an amazing job. And I can tell you, I am actually feeling goosebumps at the moment, because it's just, I do feel for you so much. But we're going to do some work today. Okay, we're going to talk about critical thinking and critical reading. And I'm going to start with some news. Okay, so some breaking news. I don't know if you've seen this news. Look, have scientists really found a gigantic crystal pyramid under the Bermuda Triangle? Well, I want you to tell me in the chat box, what do you think? Is this story true or not true? Just say yes or no. So is it true or not true? A crystal pyramid under the Bermuda Triangle. Somebody's saying yes, but most people are saying no. Isabel from Buenos Aires. Hello, Isabel. Most people are saying no. Well, look, I've got some photographs, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, about the use of photographs today in news stories. Do the photographs convince you? Do you think these photographs are true? Are they good or not good, these photos? Again, we're getting a lot of fake, no, fake, not good. Right, this is from actually Gateway 2nd edition, and maybe some of you have already used this lesson. Obviously, I know that lots of you have used Gateway in the past and that you're using Gateway to the World now. I want to begin this talk about critical thinking by talking about my daughter, my amazing daughter. She is amazing. She's very, very clever. The whole of my interest in critical thinking began with my daughter. She was about 13, I think, and she showed me this story. She showed me these photographs of these pyramids, and she said, "Dad, wow, this is amazing." Oh, I'm sorry about that, Olena. No, Elena. You will get a recording of this talk. I'm really so sorry about that. Yeah, and the best of luck to you. And I hope that you can watch this afterwards. And I'll be doing more webinars for Ukraine whenever I can. Okay, so we will meet again, obviously. Right, so coming back to the pyramids, my daughter saw this picture and she believed it was true. And I was thinking, my daughter is very intelligent, obviously. She's my daughter. She's very intelligent, but she believed this story. And I couldn't quite believe it myself that she believed it. And it made me think, how do young people today, how do they work out what is fake and what is real? Because I think adults, we have more experience of the world. We have more, we learn to think critically. But when you're young, when you're a teenager, how do you know if it's true or not? And Irina, you're saying Google it. But the problem is that when you Google things, sometimes you might still see the same story and you might still believe it. So that was where I began to become interested in critical thinking. And it made me aware that we need to teach our teenage students to think about this critically. And I can't, Megvada? I hope Mexvada? I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but you've said to check in different sites, and that is definitely part of what we need to do. So this I'm going to explain, and I think you're going to get a recording of this and also maybe a PDF if possible of the talk, so you'll be able to see this again. Do you think these pyramids exist? Why or why not? read this list of things to think about in order to check if an article on the internet is real or invented. And this is it. This is like the basic information. How do you know that a story on the internet is true or not? And again, we as adults generally know this, but our teenage students definitely do not. So the first question is, who are the people mentioned in the text? Do they really exist? Now, in my article, it talked about a Professor Verlag. And if you Google Professor Verlag, he doesn't exist. There's nowhere else. Apart from this story, he doesn't exist anywhere else. When the text mentions scientists, experts, or people, does it say who they are or where they're from? So it's very easy to say that experts think that, or scientists say that. But who are the scientists? Are they scientists from a university in particular, from a different country? Who are these people? And that's, again, another thing that we want our students to ask themselves. Is it a university? Is it a government agency? Which government? Is it a hospital? We need to think about these things, get our students to think about them. Who wrote the text? So does it give the name of the journalist? Can you find out more articles that this journalist has written? In other words, we need to investigate the source. Where does this story come from and who wrote it? Number 4, which website is it from? What do you know about the website or the people who create it? So who are they? Where is it from? Is it a reputable site? Is it something like the BBC? Is it something like, you know, a reputable, well-known site? Or is it somewhere that you've never heard of? The next question, do the places in the text really exist? In the text that we saw about the triangle, the pyramids under the sea, it talked about the Bermuda Triangle. But the Bermuda Triangle doesn't really exist. It's not a real place. I've seen a very interesting quote, Victoria, you're saying that we adults should have these skills first of all. And yes, I agree with you that these are skills for our students and that we also need to learn ourselves. Number 6, if the text uses scientific language, is it really science or pseudoscience? So I believe that in the text it talks about pulsing quasars. I mean, what does it actually mean? What is this really talking about? Who are these people? What are these things? Is it real science or is it pseudoscience? Is there photographic evidence of what the text says? Does it look real? Do you know who took the photos? We're going to talk about this in a little bit of detail. Visual literacy. How do we know when a photograph is real or not real? Who took the photograph? And number 8, what is the source of the article? Is it a text that comes from another place, like a scientific and official document? Is it from a newspaper, a serious magazine? So I think that all of these questions are things that we need to encourage our students to think about too. Now, this story, one of the places where it appears is the Metro newspaper. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Metro newspaper. The Metro newspaper is a free newspaper that is given to people in the underground, in maybe England, where it's a free newspaper that takes stories from lots of different places. So it's not like a very serious newspaper. You'll notice also that it says the name of the journalist is Rob Waugh, but it says former TV scientist turned nightmare angel of the expressways. Now, for me, nightmare angel of the expressways does not sound like a very serious journalist. Now, the interesting thing is that this is from a very old newspaper, a newspaper from Canada. And right, you've got Metro newspapers there as well, right? Okay. Yeah, well, this story is an old story, in fact. Pyramids found in Devil's Triangle, and it came from a very strange newspaper in Canada. And I just want to share you this this headline because it also says it's the Weekly World News Canada. It's from 1991. And it does say husband's snoring kills wife. And I would just like to tell you that, for example, my wife would not believe the story about the pyramids, but she would definitely believe the story about husband's snoring kills wife. So fake news, but like my wife definitely believes that this one is true. Apparently I do snore, okay? That's what people say, but I'm not sure if it's true or not, okay? So this newspaper, we need to think then, how do we help our students to think critically? Well, I think, first of all, we need to define what is critical thinking, okay? And I've read a book, a very good book about critical thinking, which says that there is no solid definition of what critical thinking is. So I always think it's useful to think of what is the opposite. So my question is, what is the opposite of uncritical thinking? And I've got a very interesting quotation here, which answers the question. And it says here, if the suggestion that occurs is at once accepted, we have uncritical thinking, the minimum of reflection. What does that mean? That means that our students could possibly read anything, not think about it, and simply accept it immediately. Exactly, Irina, gullible. That's a great word to use to describe this. Uncritical thinking is gullible. It means that you read any story in the newspaper about politics, about world news, or about celebrities, and you immediately believe everything. And that's what we want to stop, right? I think we need to teach our teenagers, obviously, because of the situation in the world, we need to get our students to think about what they're reading, whether it's true or not. This is actually a very old quotation, which is interesting, right? Because we think that critical thinking is a new idea, but it's from 1910. John Dewey, an American philosopher, psychologist, educational reformer, and he says, and I think this is a really nice quotation, if the suggestion that occurs is at once accepted, we have uncritical thinking, the minimum of reflection. To turn the thing over in the mind, to reflect, means to hunt for additional evidence, for new data that will develop the suggestion and will either bear it out or else make obvious its absurdity and irrelevance. And I think that's a great quotation, to turn it over in the mind. In other words, when we read the news, think about it. Okay, so what is it saying? What do we feel about it? And then we hunt for additional evidence. And we need to find out, is it real or is it not real? Let's find out if it's absurd or if it does actually make sense. So that, for me, is a really great starting point for the question of critical thinking. Why is it important? Well, I think it's pretty obvious, but I'm going to give you some reasons, but I'm sure you already agree that critical thinking is important. The first one is the one that I've just explained, fake news. Today, our teenage students can access the internet immediately, hopefully, but they can see lots of news there that sometimes is real and sometimes is fake. So we need to help our students to decide what is one and what is the other. Also, I think that as teachers of teenagers, our responsibility is to help our students to become autonomous learners, to become independent thinkers. Training students to think for themselves. And I think that that is something which is basically what I would call a life skill. Now, this whole question, I could spend hours talking about whether this is exactly true or not, but I think there is a chance of sort of separating education into two areas. Traditional education, I think traditional education was often the way that I learned. I'm very old. So the way that I learned as a child was simply memorizing facts. I had to remember this information for exams. I was treated as if I knew nothing, and the teacher gave me all this information. And we kind of learnt things on the surface. So, for example, maybe we would learn dates, we would learn places, we would learn the names of famous people, but we were never asked to think about the reality of what was really happening, for example, in terms of history. Meanwhile, we could suggest an opposite, which is progressive education. And here the idea is that students ask questions and teachers also. Well, Isabel, that's exactly what I'm saying right now, right? That is exactly what I'm saying. Students ask questions and teachers ask questions. So we're not simply passive, we are active in the part of learning. It's hands-on, it's experiential. We're actually doing things. We're not simply listening, we're part of the process. And as it says there, the student is an active participant in the learning process. And finally, there's deeper learning and understanding, because basically the idea is that we are not just learning facts, we're thinking about the motives, we're thinking about the reasons, we're thinking about how these things actually started. So I think that the question of critical thinking is part of a recent process where we believe that students need to question things and to learn things, to think about them more, not simply to accept everything. It's also interesting in my mind that critical thinking and thinking in general is becoming part of evaluation. What do I mean? Well, this is a headline from the British newspaper The Guardian from 2022. The idea here of the ex-Prime Minister of England, Tony Blair, is that we should be looking at critical thinking and creativity instead of simply learning dates, learning names, and learning superficial information. And I think this is interesting, but this is interesting also in terms of English teaching. This is, in fact, what I spend my life doing. I'm still a teacher, as Ina told you in the introduction. I'm a teacher. I teach every day, and I teach my students in Spain to do this school leaving exam. And we've got questions like question number 5. What should local authorities do to improve transport and mobility in large cities? And my students, when they had to answer this question, they were very angry with me because they said they had no idea how to answer the question. Not because they didn't have the English, but because they didn't have any ideas. They didn't know. But this is a good point. Victoria is saying an actual world problem. The problem is that with question number 5 is that most, I would say most governments and most local governments don't know how they can help. This is a very difficult question. I mean, it's a very deep question, question number 5, which means that when we test our students in English, we're not just testing English, we're testing their thinking skills. Okay. And by the way, this was inspiration for me for the latest edition of Gateway to the World, where we work specifically on thinking skills. This again was one of the inspirational moments that made me think that we need to help our teenage students. In that exam that you've just seen, some of the marks are to do, again, not with English, but with thinking. It says the message, so this is 1 out of 3 marks, One of the marks is for clear, precise, coherent messages with interesting ideas which are relevant to the question. For me, that is not a question of English. For me, that is a question of thinking skills. And the second point, students can develop a personal point of view with original opinions which are adequately backed up. So again, I would suggest that we are evaluating our students not only on English, but also on their thinking skills. By the way, from time to time, I know that there are maybe some questions and I'm not always able to see them or to answer them immediately, but I'm going to try to make sure that at the end of this session, there are 5 minutes where you can ask me any questions that you have. Okay, I hope my timing is good and we can do that. Okay, another reason why critical thinking is important is because, as it says on this slide, thinking in depth about what we read, see, and hear is an academic skill and a life skill. So to be studying at university, you need to be able to think critically, and in life in general, you also need to be able to think critically. And that means that it's helping also in something that today many people are aware of, which is global citizenship. This, by the way, then is a slide where we've got this idea that in English or in any subject, we're not just teaching knowledge, we are also teaching attitudes and action. And you can see in the bottom right corner, the ability to deploy critical thinking skills, questioning oneself and the world at large. These are things which are part of global citizenship. Right now, at this moment, by the way, I'm sure you don't look like this. I can't see you, but I'm sure you don't look like this. But maybe this is something that you're thinking. You're saying, okay, but what do we do in the classroom? Because I think that I've probably convinced you that critical thinking is important. But as always, when we're talking about teaching, the real question is, what do I do with my teenage students? That's the real question. And the rest of my session now is going to be giving you some practical ideas about things that we can do with our students in the classroom every day. The first thing that we can do, so I'm going to break this down into lots of different skills, okay? And the first skill is separating fact from fake. And in fact, my suggestion is to do exactly this, which we've seen before about the pyramids under the Bermuda Triangle. This is a great checklist. And as I say, you're going to have access to this talk afterwards. I've just seen Victoria's comment, which is really making me laugh. Why didn't they implement critical thinking sometime before the 21st century? That is a very good question. Yeah, especially if it's a 21st century skill, right? It should have come before the 21st century skill. And actually, maybe it did. But I love your comment. It's great. It's beautiful. Okay, this is a great checklist. Your students could use this checklist for literally any story that they see on the internet. 8 questions, they follow the 8 questions, and this will give them a very good idea if the story is real or fake. So this is one area to look at then straight away, fact from fake, follow this checklist and see where it takes your students. Now, the next thing to think about is, I think something which is becoming more and more important as time goes by is what we call visual literacy. I asked you before if you thought that this photograph was real or fake. And I think that most of you thought it was fake. But can you tell me in the chat box, what makes you think that this photograph is fake? Why do you think it is fake? I mean, I agree with you, definitely. But what makes you believe that it is a fake photograph? No sources, definitely. We don't know where it came from. It's not clear. You're right, Marina. It's very fuzzy, right? Bad Photoshop, right? The quality of the photo. I mean, do these pyramids look slightly familiar to you? Do they look like any real pyramids that do exist in the world? I can tell you this because recently I was in Egypt giving talks, and in my talk I was in Giza, and right next to me were the Great Pyramids, Eugenia, those pyramids in Giza. They look, I think, basically, my theory is that those are the pyramids from Giza in Egypt, and they've done a very bad Photoshop making them blue, making them fuzzy, and as you're saying, no copyright, no source. So visual literacy is a really interesting area today. So how do we know what is fake or what is real? There is a great thinking routine which is called See, Think, Wonder. It all makes sense. See, think, wonder. The idea is when our students see any photograph, the first question is, what do you see? Describe the photo objectively. What is it exactly that you can see objectively? The next question is, what do you think the photo shows? Justify your answer. So what do you see? What do you think you see? And then the third question, what do you wonder when you look at the photo? What more would you like to know? So we're going to look at a photograph now, and we're going to try and follow this procedure. What do you see? What do you think the photo shows? And what does it make you wonder? Now, if you do use Gateway to the World, these photographs, you will know exactly what they are. Don't put, if you know what they are, please don't say in the chat box, because you're going to give other people ideas. But if we followed the See, Think routine, objectively, what can you see? For example, how many squares, objectively, how many squares can you see, more or less? Can you tell me in the chat box? 22, 30, 30, right, 40. Okay, those are good guesses. I think it is actually 30. I think it's 3 rows of 10. What color are the rectangles? I mean, this is a stupid question, right? But this is an objective question. What color are the squares? Black, thank you. Yes, exactly. Underneath, at the bottom part of the black squares or black rectangles, we can see, what can you see, do you think? What can you see underneath at the bottom of the rectangles? What does it look like? Labels, thank you, Anna. Some kind of frame, right? A description, right? Okay, perfect. And then the orange or the yellow things that we can see, I think objectively we could say that they look like different kinds of shapes, different forms of things. I know that somebody in the chat box has already said what it is. But the next question, what do you think you can see? What do you think you can see? What do you think those objects are inside the black rectangles? Any ideas? So this is here now you're speculating, like leaves, Katerina, artifacts, stones, ancient tools, sea stones. Anna knows the correct answer. Jewels, leaves, a museum collection. These are great answers, by the way, because this is exactly what the artist, pieces of gold. Thank you, Tatiana, I think. Tatiana said pieces of gold. This is exactly what the artist wanted to make us think. And Anna and a few other people have told me exactly what it is. They are, in fact, cornflakes. Yes, oh yeah, they are cornflakes. They are cornflakes. So the next question is, what does it make you wonder? So why has somebody put pictures of cornflakes, given them labels with numbers and letters, and put them with pins on these different squares? So that's what it's made to make you wonder. Their shape, Tatiana, you're actually correct. It's kind of looking at their shape. So you can see that this is exactly what we do with our students. We've got a strange picture, we've got an interesting picture. We tell them to say what they can see, what they think they can see, and then to wonder about what they're seeing. And this is, in fact, this is from Gateway to the World, B1 Plus, the new edition of Gateway. We've got this text, which is about modern art, and modern art, which is all based around food. And I'm going to explain to you the idea of this work of art. The idea of the work of art, exactly, Uliana, that is exactly right. They're like people, all of them are different. That is exactly one of the ideas of this work of art. We've got a work of art where we're looking at something as obvious, as simple as cornflakes, but each one is unique, each one is different, each one is interesting. And the idea is that the work of art, which actually cost quite a lot of money, the work of art is making us think about the uniqueness of different objects and maybe also different people. Now, what we do in Gateway to the World is we have, as with Gateway second edition, we've got these texts which are making our students think. Okay, in this case, the critical thinkers question: are the works of art in the text serious? Now, I think that your first reaction could be that a work of art with cornflakes is really stupid. But maybe I'm making you change your mind, and maybe the text will make you change your mind. So the question here in the critical thinkers box, it doesn't just say, are the works of art in the text serious? It also then asks the question, what makes you say that? And I'd like you to try and remember that question, because that is a great question to ask our students nearly every day. So you ask them their opinion, and they could simply say, works of art, modern art is stupid. And you could say, well, you know, yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. But what makes you say that? What we are encouraging our students to do is to get them to create an argument, to think critically, and to form some kind of opinion. So I think with your students, and I can feel from the text box that you feel the same. This is like just an interesting question. And it's an interesting question to get students thinking. And that is basically, yeah, taxonomy of Bloom. That is actually a very interesting, because that is what the idea of this work of art was. It was getting them to think in terms of a taxonomy. And yes, basically, we're getting our students to question and to give arguments for their opinion. And you'll notice that I don't think it's done in a boring way. I don't think that we have to be, to get our students to think critically does not mean something that is boring kind of traditional philosophy. We can get some really interesting thinking from something as simple as a picture of cornflakes, which is pretty amazing, right? Now, the whole question of visual literacy, this is actually a picture from Gateway to the World, and it suddenly made me think. Again, in the chat box, very quickly, can you tell me, do you think this is a real photo or a fake photo? Is it real or fake? Fake, fake. Fake, fake, fake. Right. Somebody said real. Again, I think that there's no reason why our teenage students should know that this is fake. So we need, again, this is actually from the book, and it's from a text about global warming. And the photo is fake because it is predicting the future. It's predicting what might happen if one day the sea levels in the whole world rise. So I suppose my point is that we keep on needing to ask our students and ourselves, is this real or is this fake? Because I think that fake photos are being used more and more. By the way, I don't know if you know in Ukraine with the news at the moment about the royal family in England, but this week there has been lots of controversy, right, about a photo with Kate Middleton, the wife of Prince William, because that photo turned out to be fake. And I do believe that fake photos are going to be something that we and our students have to deal with almost every week now. So here's an interesting photo that I've got for you. That's right. Oh, yeah, she did some Photoshop, or she or somebody else did some Photoshop with Kate Middleton. Poor Kate Middleton. Now, I'm going to show you an amazing photograph now, which was taken by the French professor Etienne Klein. And I think you know the James Webb Telescope is an amazing telescope which can see further than anywhere else at the moment. And he took this photograph of the star which is closest to the sun. And I'm going to show you the photograph. At the moment, Victoria, there's no photograph. I'm going to show you the photograph, and I want you to tell me which planet does it look like, okay? Can anybody tell me which planet does this look like? So it says that it's the star closest to the sun. Irina, it looks like Mars, right? Okay, Mars could be the sun. Most people are saying Mars. Can I tell you the truth? I'm going to tell you the truth about this photograph. This photograph is not the star closest to the sun. It is not Mars. Victoria, it's not pizza. This is a slice of sausage, okay? In Spain, we have amazing sausage called chorizo. And this photograph is a slice of sausage. And this professor, he really exists. So if you Google him, he really exists. But he took this photograph and he did it as a joke. And he managed to get Cantimpalo, Isabel, yes. He managed to get this photograph into a very prestigious scientific journal. And he caused lots of controversy because people afterwards said, hey, you know, you're fooling us. No, 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 Irina, this is true. This is absolutely true. Please Google Etienne Klein, Professor Etienne Klein, after this webinar. It's a slice of sausage, and he fooled everybody. And I suppose the message is that it's very difficult to believe what we can see. Actually, NASA, after seeing this photograph, NASA did this amazing post on Facebook. Europa or frying pan, one of these is Jupiter's moon Europa, the rest are frying pans, which is a beautiful, right? This is a beautiful, well, Irina, you're saying, shouldn't we question even professors? Exactly. I think we need to question professors too, right? But he was actually very sorry afterwards because he caused a lot of confusion. But this is a great one also. I'm going to tell you straight away which one is the frying pan. I think the frying pan is the one, so from your screen, it's in the middle on the left. That is actually the Jupiter's moon, and the rest are frying pans. So I suppose what I'm basically suggesting is it's very difficult to believe what we see sometimes, right? Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's think about more critical thinking and more critical reading. One simple thing that we can do in our lessons is to separate fact from opinions. And this is a text, it was actually from Gateway second edition some time ago. It's a question about the White House. We've got some quiz questions. Any idea how many bathrooms does the White House have? Do you want to just type in a guess? 214, that is a lot of bathrooms. That is a lot of bathrooms, even for the White House. Okay, I'll tell you the answer in a minute. What's special about the desk in the Oval Office? Does anybody have any ideas? Why is the desk special? Okay, I will explain the thing about the desk in a second. What sport do some presidents play in the Oval Office? Well, that is a very controversial question. Yeah, it's there are lots of strange answers there. Golf, actually, you are totally correct. Natalia, you were correct. Golf is the sport that some presidents play, and there are 4 doors in the Oval Office. 1 takes you to a private dining room, 2 take you to the West Wing. Where does the 4th take you? Now, this is a quiz. Then we ask our students to read the text to find the answers. Some of you might recognize this from Gateway 2nd edition. And the answers, by the way, I can tell you now, there are 35 bathrooms in the White House. The desk is special because it is old, from 1850, and it was a present from Queen Victoria. The next one, the sport was golf. You're right. And then the 4th door takes you to a beautiful rose garden. Now, the students read the text, and the text is basically what I have just told you now. And a great critical thinking question is, does the text generally express facts or opinions? And I think that you can probably see from what I've explained from the quiz and from my answers now, the answer would be that this text is giving facts. Thank you. Yes, Natalia, Olga, definitely, this is giving you facts. So this is a very simple task. Actually, it can be sometimes very complicated because sometimes we mix facts with opinions, right? When we read the news, there might be a mixture. But I think it's a very simple starting point in terms of critical thinking. What is fact? What is opinion? And getting our students used to thinking about that question, which can become a complex question, I think is really, really, really useful. Okay, so simple question, but it's a powerful question and a very useful question. Another question that I think is very, very basic, but very useful is thinking about the text type, thinking about where a text is from. And this again is an example from Gateway 2nd edition, but it says, I want you to look on the side where it says critical thinking. Lee consults a forum on the internet for information about the Brit School. What are the advantages of consulting a forum and what are the disadvantages? In the chat box, would you like to share some ideas about, first of all, advantages? Why is a forum on the internet, so thinking about teenagers, right, in particular, why is a forum a good thing? What is good about forums? Why is it a nice thing to read a forum? Brainstorming, that's a very nice idea, Olga. Thank you very much. Different opinions. Yes, they share their ideas, they share their opinions, discussing. Teenagers can speak frankly about what they think. These are brilliant ideas, by the way. Sometimes they can be funny, quick chatting, many different ideas. I think that is really powerful too. Thank you. These are great ideas. Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to think of the opposite. It will take a while in the chat box maybe to change. But now I'd like you to tell me, what are some of the disadvantages of forums? Right. So, Isabel, I think that you're talking probably here about disadvantages, right? That we're getting opinions rather than facts. I mean, that could be positive or it could be negative, right? Sometimes it can be fake information. Yes, thank you. Sometimes it could be a bad influence or wrong ideas or wrong advance. They are only opinions. Right, they can influence our attitude, mistaken thoughts. Thank you very much. This is, by the way, I really appreciate your comments in the chat box. You're so fast and you've got so many great ideas. This is beautiful. For me, this is perfect. And I agree with everything that you're saying there. They can be prejudiced. That is a good word, Anna, prejudiced. Now, what we're doing here, we are not saying that forums are good or bad. That's not the question. What we're doing is we're simply getting students to think about what happens in a forum. Because I think that many teenagers could look at a forum and think that everything is fact, everything is real, everything is true. And that's not the case. Now, a forum is great because we're sharing many, many different opinions, as you've said, but they are opinions. They might be based on fact, hopefully, but they're still opinions. Tatiana, you've said unreal persons. Another problem with forums is that maybe they're fake, right? I mean, when you have opinions about a restaurant, who wrote that opinion? It could be the owner of the restaurant. It could be an enemy of the owner of the restaurant. Now, that is, I'm not saying again that forums are good or bad. I'm saying that we need to help our teenage students to think about, okay, if this is a forum, this could be only opinions. Some of the opinions might be fake. It can still be useful because I'm going to learn things from so many different people and presumably so many different real people. But the only thing I'm trying to encourage our students to do is to think critically. When they see a forum, what is good about the forum? What is bad about the forum? And we're encouraging our students then to think critically about what they read in a forum. A forum is different from an encyclopedia, right? We know that, but our students maybe don't. Okay, a few other ideas. I'm conscious that we have about 10 minutes maybe, so I'm going to share some ideas. If I don't get to the end of my talk, then don't worry. I'm sure we're going to share some more time together very soon. But here we've got another critical thinking idea: identifying and summarizing key points and arguments in a text. I think that summarizing, actually the whole skill of summarizing a text is a great thing to practice with our students, because if you can summarize a text, it means that you have understood it. Now, here we've got, again, some kind of forum and blog, and it says basically, write 1 or 2 sentences to summarize what each person thinks about the question of teenage happiness in different countries. Are they giving facts or opinions? So again, we're doing this idea of the students read a text, they try and find the essence of the text, the most important part of the text there, and then think about opinions and facts, which is what we encouraged before. So basically, I'm suggesting that when we ask our teenage students to write a short summary of a text, we will find out if they really understood it or not. Okay, the next thing to think about is teaching thorough research on the internet. So, for example, here are some skills that I think we need to encourage our students to perform. When you look at a website, it's important to think critically about what you find there. Does it appear to be reliable? Who is the author of the website? Does it seem to have any particular bias? So these are the things that I started talking about at the beginning of my talk. Even thinking about the URL of each website that students look at, we know that the URL gives some kind of information, what country the information is coming from, and that can be critically important. Is it a government agency? Is it a university? Is it a private company? Is it a shop? Is it a commercial agency? So it's a very simple thing that our students, our teenage students, can learn, is what information does the URL give us? And also, and by the way, this is maybe interesting for you as teachers. When I write my books, any of the information that I include in my book I have to tell my editors 3 different places minimum where I have found the same piece of information. If you think again about my pyramids at the beginning of this talk, those pyramids, how many places can you find the same information? And if you look on the internet, that information only appears in 1 or 2 different places. So in other words, when the students find some amazing information on the internet, they should look for different sources. I am conscious, actually, by the way, that I'm kind of running out of time, and I would like to have a Q&A session at the end of the session. So maybe I'm gonna show 1 or 2 more ideas, and then maybe we could go to question and answer. because I am aware that maybe some of you have questions that you would like to ask me. But yes, another critical thinking skill is this idea of simply clarifying your own idea, your own opinions about a text based on some kind of reasoning. And I've kind of suggested this idea already, but I'm going to suggest it again. We all have opinions about everything, right? So, for example, should school start later for teenagers? Yes or no? Can you tell me in the chat box, what do you think? Should school start? Thank you, by the way, for all of your lovely comments. Some people are saying yes. Right. I mean, there are scientific reasons why it should start later. And in this text in Gateway to the World, we have lots of information. Apparently, in several schools around the world, when school started later for teenagers, they got better results in their exams. And one of the scientific reasons appears to be that teenagers, yes, Olga, you've taken the words from my mouth, that teenagers have to sleep longer. So apparently it is a scientific proven fact that teenagers' sleeping rhythms, I think they're called circadian rhythms, I think that's the correct word. Teenagers' sleeping rhythms are different from adults and different from younger children. Now, basically, in the text, another reason why maybe school should not start later is that it can cause problems for parents, right? Because what the parents do, the parents have to take their children to school earlier. Also, if you start later for teachers, that might be a problem too. But basically, this text is giving ideas both for and against. And then, as you've seen, this is from the new edition of Gateway to the World, and this special edition that you have in Ukraine. In your opinion, should school start later to allow teenage students to sleep more? What makes you say that? And then it says, use ideas in the text and or other facts, opinions, and experiences to justify your opinion. In other words, and this is an important point that I'm trying to make, we all have opinions. We can all say yes or no, or it's stupid, or it's a great idea. But what we want to encourage with our students is that they can argue, that they can give good reasons, that they can justify their opinions, that they can back them up. And this is really the key. This is how I began my talk today. The key is explaining your reasons. So you're not just saying this is stupid or this is great, but what we want to do is to encourage our students to give a reason, to give some kind of backup. I think I'm going to make this my last point, and then we're going to do some question and answer. The last point that I want to share with you is this idea of empathy, seeing other people's points of views, and also this idea of going beyond our first impressions. And I've got one simple example, which again is from Gateway to the World, and it's about people who make, it's the blue text. You know, in England, we call 999, okay, for the police or for the ambulance or for the fire brigade. And there are many many people who make fake calls to the 911 service. And of course, in the text, there are some very silly examples of people doing this. And I think that's a terrible thing. The thing is, at first, it might seem funny, but what we want to do is to help our students to empathize more. And so this is a great exercise to do that. Get into groups of 3. One of you is a police officer working at a 911 call center. One of you is a person who has just made a hoax 911 call because you were bored and wanted to make your friends laugh. And one of you is a person who has just tried to call 911 to report an accident. And the idea of this exercise is simply to get people to think about a text from a different point of view, to think about how you would feel in this situation. So that's what they do in stage 2, and then they have a role play. So the whole idea here is simply getting students to think about different points of view. Okay, I'm going to jump some slides because I haven't had time to do everything, but I do want to finish on time because I know that we're all busy and we have lots of other things to do. I know that Ukraine is a place where we have, on the Facebook page, we have thousands of followers, and it is a real honor for you to be following me. It's a great way to stay in touch. If you ever have any questions, any comments, any things that you would like to share with me, I always reply to everything personally myself. I would just like to say again, I don't usually say this, but I would like to say it. I'm just, like always, massively honored to be with you teachers in Ukraine. I think you're doing just such an amazing job. I think that you can never be praised enough for the work that you do. I think that you are an example to the rest of the world about all of the things that you're doing. You're carrying on caring for your students, and I have massive respect for you. And if I ever come back to Ukraine, which I really hope I do, I'm going to bring my books, and I want you all to sign my book for me instead of the other way around. I don't know if anybody does have any questions for me, but if not, I would like to just, again, say what a pleasure it's been to share this time with you all. Ina, I don't know if you have anything to share.
Just to remind everyone that you are going to have the recording of this amazing webinar, and I'm trying to read your comments, which move very fast. And I do see from your comments that you appreciated and liked the talk. And I want to remind you that you will get the certificate within 3 days. It will not happen immediately after the webinar ends. And me or one of my colleagues, we will get in touch with you to make sure that you do have a sample copy or sample pages of Gateway to the World. And if not, we are happy and ready to bring it to you. Don't see if you have any questions. Take this opportunity and ask Dave any questions regarding critical thinking, simply thinking, or teaching teenagers. Isabel has got a question for you.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, I hope I've persuaded you that it's easy to include critical thinking in your classes. I think maybe sometimes it's true that education authorities around the world don't always encourage critical thinking because critical thinking makes people independent, and that's not always what education authorities want. But I think that it's something that is just becoming so common now. And I think that really, at the very simplest, if you just include in your lessons the question why, the question why is a very powerful question, right? So we do anything and we say why. So why is it a good idea? And the other question, what makes you say that? If you simply include those questions in all of your lessons, why and what makes you think that, we are already on a great journey in terms of teaching critical thinking. So, at its simplest, that is the way to teach critical thinking. Ask the questions why a lot and what makes you think that a lot. Thank you for all the lovely comments, by the way. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for so many lovely comments throughout the talk. By the way, I was explaining to Ina just before this talk that on Saturday I am giving a plenary in Czech Republic. And as I told you at the beginning of the session, every time I begin a talk, I begin by talking about teachers in Ukraine. So I'm spreading the message as much as I possibly can about the amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Dave. I do hope that at least one of the ideas teachers will try tomorrow with their students. My favorite one, which you shared, is Sitting Wonder. I live with this thinking routine, my life, not only teaching, not only communicating with teachers, but this is the part of my day-to-day life, Sitting Wonder. And I would like to encourage our participants to try this thinking routine with your students tomorrow at the lesson. And thank you very much. I lack words to say how happy I am that you agreed and had this talk and spent this hour and a bit with our teachers. Thank you very much. And first of all, see you